Hey guys, it's Mrs. Dobmeyer, and I'm sorry I couldn't be in your class today, but I wanted to make sure that I recorded myself telling you the story of the Nutcracker. So, the Nutcracker story goes all the way back to the late 1800s. Now, in the late 1800s, there were no cars. People got around using horses pulled by wagons or buggies, or sometimes they just rode horses. And there were no Christmas lights. This is a Christmas story. But I want you to picture a snowy Christmas Eve because our story takes place on Christmas Eve. And the main character in our story is a girl named Clara. Now, Clara is a couple years older than you guys. She's probably about 10 or 11 years old approximately. She has a younger brother named Fritz. And Fritz is probably, if I had to guess, he's probably 6 or 7. And Clara and Fritz's family, every year for Christmas Eve, they lived in kind of a big house. They're kind of lucky, I guess. They hosted a big Christmas Eve party. And they invited all of their family and friends that were in the area to come. And along with that family and friends would be probably, I don't know, probably more than a room full of students like what you guys have here. There'd probably be, maybe there'd be like 30 kids at this party, lots of kids. And so Clara and Fritz always looked forward to this party because of all the cousins and family friends that they would see at this party. They also really looked forward to seeing a man, Clara's uncle actually, and his name was Uncle Drosselmeyer. I know that kind of sounds like Dobmeyer, but it wasn't. It's Drosselmeyer. Everybody say Drosselmeyer. Okay, so Uncle Drosselmeyer was a toy maker, and he was known as the best toy maker in the area. And some people even said that Uncle Drosselmeyer's toys possessed magical powers. That was kind of a rumor. No one really knew for sure whether that was true, but some people said that his toys had magical powers. So anyway, it was time for the party to start, and the guests began to arrive on their horses and in their sleighs, maybe because there was snow on the ground. And more and more kids were there. Uncle Drosselmeyer wasn't there yet because everybody was kind of waiting on him to arrive. He was one of the last guests to arrive. And when he did finally arrive, all of the kids were so excited because they couldn't wait to see what toys he had made for them this year. He always made one toy for every kid at the party. So finally he arrives. He comes through the door and all the kids go running over to Uncle Drosselmeyer, and he barely had time to say hello to anyone, and he was just bombarded with all these kids. And they're gathered around him, and he starts handing out toys one by one. And he gets to Clara, and he hands her an iPad. Now wait a minute. He couldn't have handed her an iPad. This is the late 1800s. That's silly. He handed Clara a nutcracker. Wooden. Yep. Made of wood. Oh, and his mouth opened like this. And she loved it. She thought it was a really cool toy. And she also kind of thought, well, this toy could be magical. So she wanted to hold on to this toy all night. She did not let it leave her hands, because if it did anything magical, she wanted to make sure she was the one holding it. So the night went on, and she had a great time with all of her cousins and friends at the party, but nothing really magical happened with the Nutcracker. She wasn't disappointed though. She loved it, and everyone else's toys were cool too. So it gets to be the end of the party, and one by one, all the guests go home. Soon everyone has left, and it's time for bed. And Clara's mother tells her to go upstairs to her room, get ready for bed, but you've got to leave the Nutcracker under the tree. Clara was not happy about this, but she listened to her mother, put the Nutcracker under the tree, and went back upstairs to her room for the night. Now, she went to bed, and just like maybe a lot of you had a hard time going to sleep on Christmas Eve. Have any of you ever had a hard time going to sleep on Christmas Eve? Yes, me too. I still do to this day, even though I'm a grown-up. Anyway, she had a hard time going to sleep. She just lay there and kind of tossed and turned, could not sleep. Finally, late into the night, excuse me, everything was quiet in the house. She decides finally to just get out of bed. She really wanted to check on her Nutcracker anyway, maybe play with him a little bit. So she goes downstairs. She gets to the bottom of the stairs and can see her Nutcracker there under the tree, but then something weird happens. The Nutcracker begins to grow and grow until he is life-size. This is obviously very strange. Claire has never seen anything like this before. So she's just kind of frozen there on the stairs, kind of like staring at this Nutcracker, life-size, like grown-up, adult-sized Nutcracker. But then out of the corner of her eye, she's like frozen and just, with all how weird that was, out of the corner of her eye, across the room, she sees something else. Also life-size, maybe slightly smaller than Nutcracker, is this guy. This mouse soldier looking guy. We'll call him the Mouse King. He appears in the doorway. He looks at the Nutcracker. The Nutcracker looks at him. They're across the room. And Clara realizes that they know each other. But not only that, she can tell that they really don't like each other. In fact, the Mouse King starts to move closer to the Nutcracker and draws his sword. The Nutcracker draws his sword. They move closer together, and then they begin to fight with their swords. Clara is watching this sword fight, and she starts to get worried. Like, what if her Nutcracker gets hurt? She didn't want that to happen. Excuse me. She didn't want her Nutcracker to get hurt. So she thinks, what could I do? What could I do? And she finally thinks of something. She decides to get her slipper off of her foot, and she throws it at the Mouse King's head and hits him and kills him. Now, wait a minute. Can you kill anything with your slipper? I don't think so. She did not kill him. She throws her slipper at the Mouse King, hits him in the head, which makes him turn away from the Nutcracker, which then gives the Nutcracker a chance to take his sword and kill the Mouse King. Dead. This is a violent show, you guys. I bet you didn't know that. Yep. So the Nutcracker kills the Mouse King, thanks to Clara's quick thinking with hitting him in the head with her slipper. The Nutcracker, with the Mouse King being dead, his spell is broken, and he turns into a real prince. Clara doesn't even know what to think. All of this is beyond anything she would have ever thought could happen. So there stands her Nutcracker prince, and he thanks her for her help and asks if she would like to come with him to his kingdom, to the land of the sweets. And she gets so excited and of course says yes. And so out the door they go into the wind and snow. You can barely see anything, and they're walking. It's not very long. They couldn't have walked more than 15 or 20 steps. And all of a sudden the wind and the snow begins to clear, and they find themselves in the most beautiful land full of candy canes, giant lollipops, cakes, cookies, so beautifully decorated and just delicious looking. They're in the land of the sweets. When people in the land of the sweets see that their Nutcracker prince has returned and his spell is broken, the celebrations immediately begin with food and with dancing. And so the dances begin. There are dancers from Spain, from China, from Arabia or the Middle East, from Russia, And there are also a couple special dances from the Snow Queen, and also, lastly, a beautiful dance by the Sugar Plum Fairy, who some of you might have heard of before. She's a character in the Nutcracker Story. Sugar Plum Fairy, wearing this beautiful purple outfit, and she dances the most beautiful dance anyone has seen. Now, after the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, Clara realizes that it could be almost Christmas morning and she probably needs to get home. So she turns to her Nutcracker Prince and lets him know that she needs to go home, and he nods and understands. And the next thing she knew, she's back in her bed. And she feels like she's just waking up from a dream. But she knew that she couldn't go to sleep. And it wasn't a dream, but it kind of felt like it was. So we're left at the end of the story a little confused, like Clara is, trying to decide if the Nutcracker and all the magic that came with him was real or just a dream. And that is the story of the Nutcracker. I hope you guys liked it.